The city of Chicago never truly slept, but Adrian Frost had been awake far longer than any city on Earth. 300 years of consciousness, 300 years of vigilance, 300 years of watching empires rise and fall from behind carefully constructed facades. Tonight, he sat in his corner office on the 70th floor of Eclipse Industries, the glass and steel tower he'd built to touch the sky, playing the role he'd perfected over decades: the exhausted CEO, the overworked executive, the man drowning in responsibility. It was a performance, of course. Everything about his human life was a performance. For 2 weeks now, items had been disappearing from the executive floor. Small things: at first a vintage fountain pen, a leather notebook, a silver letter opener that had once belonged to a Habsburg prince. Adrian could have used his abilities to ferret out the thief in seconds, could have reached into minds and pulled the truth from trembling thoughts. But he had rules, personal codes developed over centuries of mistakes. He refused to use compulsion on humans unless absolutely necessary. So instead, he waited, patient as stone, watching through half-closed eyes that glowed faintly red in the darkness when no one was looking. The cleaning crew arrived at 2 in the morning, as they always did. Adrian tracked their movements through the building by sound and scent alone, his supernatural senses painting a perfect picture without him ever having to move. 5 people tonight, 4 regulars and one he didn't recognize, or rather, one whose heartbeat he'd heard before but never bothered to truly notice. It was steady, unremarkably human, tinged with exhaustion that ran bone deep. The kind of tired that came from living, not just working. He heard her cart before he heard her footsteps, the squeaking wheel that needed oil, the soft clink of cleaning supplies, the rustle of trash bags. She moved through the outer offices with practiced efficiency, and Adrian remained perfectly still in his chair, eyes closed, breathing slow and measured. He'd learned to mimic human sleep so well that even other vampires had trouble telling the difference. The door to his office opened with a whisper of hinges. Her heartbeat grew closer, and with it came her scent: cheap soap, worn fabric, the faint sweetness of the juice box her son had probably spilled on her earlier. And underneath it all, something else. Something that made his long dormant instincts stir like creatures waking from hibernation. She moved around his office quietly, emptying his trash, wiping down surfaces he never touched. Adrian felt her pause near his desk, her heartbeat quickening slightly. He waited for the theft, for the reaching hand, for the proof he'd been seeking. Instead, he felt fabric settle across his shoulders, gentle as a mother tucking in a child. "No one deserves to be this tired," she whispered, so softly he wondered if she even knew she'd spoken aloud. Adrian Frost, who had not been surprised by anything in over a century, who had seen civilizations crumble and technologies transform the world, who had watched the woman he loved die in his arms 200 years ago, felt his carefully constructed walls shatter like glass. Those words, that exact phrase, Catherine had said them to him on their last night together, when he'd sat vigil at her bedside, refusing to sleep, refusing to miss a single moment of the time they had left. "No one deserves to be this tired, my love," she'd said, touching his face with fingers already growing cold. "Promise me you'll rest someday. Promise me you'll find peace." He'd failed to keep that promise for 2 centuries. Adrian remained frozen in his chair long after the cleaning woman left, her worn cardigan still draped across his shoulders, smelling of laundry detergent and something indefinably human. His hands gripped the armrests hard enough to crack the wood, his control slipping for the first time in decades. When he finally moved, the sun was beginning to paint the eastern sky in shades of pearl and rose colors he could see but never feel, separated from their warmth by the curse that had made him what he was. He lifted the cardigan carefully, studying it in the growing light. It was old, patched at the elbows, the kind of garment someone kept wearing because they couldn't afford to replace it. On the collar, barely visible, was a name written in faded marker: Elena Rivers. By noon, Adrian had a complete dossier on his mysterious cleaning woman. Elena Rivers, 32 years old, widow, single mother to a 7-year-old son named Lucas. To jobs night cleaning at Eclipse Industries and day shifts at a diner in Pilsen. Husband killed 3 years ago in a construction accident. Insurance company found a way to deny the claim. Living paycheck to paycheck in a neighborhood where gunshots were as common as church bells. And yet, despite everything, her supervisor's notes described her as unfailingly kind, always willing to cover shifts for coworkers, known for leaving encouraging notes for the other cleaning staff. But it was the biometric data from the building's security systems that truly caught his attention. Every human who encountered a vampire experienced a physiological response: elevated heart rate, increased cortisol, the ancient hindbrain screaming predator, even when the conscious mind couldn't identify the threat. The security logs showed this response in every person who'd entered Adrian's office in the past month. Every person except Elena Rivers. Her vitals had remained steady, calm, as if she'd been in the presence of nothing more threatening than a sleeping accountant. That was impossible, unless she wasn't entirely human, or unless, a treacherous voice whispered in the back of his mind, she was someone who had known him before, someone whose soul recognized him, even when her conscious mind did not. Adrian spent the next week conducting an investigation that would have made intelligence agencies envious. He pulled every record, traced every connection, followed every thread of Elena Rivers' life backward through time. And what he found made his ancient heart beat faster in his chest. Elena's maternal line traced back, generation by generation, to a family that had once lived in Boston. The Ashford family, Catherine's family. The genealogical records were fragmentary. A devastating fire in 1892 had scattered the survivors, sent them fleeing to new cities with new names, trying to escape a tragedy that Adrian knew all too well. He'd been there. He'd failed to prevent it. He'd watched Catherine's family home burn while hunters held him at bay with blessed silver and holy water, ensuring he could only watch as the woman he loved was consumed by flames meant for him. But some had survived: a younger sister, 2 cousins, an aunt who'd been visiting relatives in New York when the fire happened. They'd changed their names, disappeared into America's growing cities, and their descendants had spread across the country like seeds on the wind. Elena Rivers was a direct descendant of Catherine Ashford, not a distant cousin or a vague connection. The maternal line ran unbroken from Catherine's younger sister, Sarah, straight down to the woman who cleaned his office floors and left her cardigan to warm a creature who couldn't feel cold. The knowledge should have brought him comfort. Instead, it terrified him, because it meant that fate, or destiny, or whatever force governed the universe's cruel sense of humor, had brought Catherine's blood back to him. And Adrian had learned, over 3 centuries of painful lessons, that anything he loved would be taken from him in fire and blood and sorrow. He should have stayed away. He should have transferred her to a different building, a different shift, somewhere far from his orbit. Instead, he found himself in the basement of Eclipse Industries at 2:30 in the morning, wearing maintenance coveralls and a baseball cap, his supernatural nature suppressed to the point where even he felt dimly human. Elena was fighting with an industrial buffer that had jammed, her small frame struggling with the heavy machine. Adrian watched her for a moment from the shadows, noting the determined set of her jaw, the way she refused to give up even when the task was clearly beyond her strength. So much like Catherine, so heartbreakingly, dangerously like her. "Need a hand?" he asked, stepping into the light. She jumped, spinning to face him with wide eyes that caught the fluorescent light and flashed, just for an instant, with a golden gleam that made his breath catch. Catherine's eyes had done that in candlelight, a trick of her particular shade of hazel that made them seem to glow like a cat's. "You scared me," Elena said, one hand pressed to her chest. "I didn't think anyone else was down here." "Night maintenance," Adrian lied smoothly, gesturing to his coveralls. "Heard you fighting with the buffer. These old models jam up if you don't hit them just right." He knelt beside the machine, his fingers finding the release mechanism that decades of building management had taught him existed. The buffer hummed back to life, and Elena's face transformed with relief. "Thank you so much. I was about to give up and tell my supervisor it was broken." She studied him with open curiosity. No fear in her gaze, despite being alone in a basement with a strange man in the middle of the night. "I haven't seen you before. Are you new?" "Relatively," Adrian said, which was true if you considered 50 years of building ownership relatively new. "I usually work the lower floors." Adrian, he caught himself just in time, Anderson. Friends call me Andy, Elena, she said, offering her hand. When he took it, her skin was warm against his perpetually cool flesh, and he felt a jolt of recognition pass between them like static electricity. She felt it too. He saw it in the way her eyes widened, the way her breath caught, but she didn't pull away. Thank you, Andy. You might have just saved my job. I can't afford to be written up for equipment damage. They talked for 20 minutes while she finished the basement floors, and Adrian learned more about her real life than any dossier could have told him. She spoke about Lucas, her son, with fierce maternal pride, how he was reading above grade level, how he wanted to be an astronaut, how she was saving every penny she could for a better school district. She mentioned the husband she'd lost with quiet sorrow, the kind that had settled into her bones and become part of who she was. She admitted that she was tired, so tired sometimes she didn't know how she kept going. But she would do anything, sacrifice anything, to give her son a chance at something better. What about you? She asked as she packed up her supplies. What's your story, Andy? You seem like someone who's lived a lot of life. Adrian smiled, thinking of the centuries compressed into that innocent question. I'm older than I look, he said truthfully, and I've made a lot of mistakes. Trying to do better now, aren't we all? Elena said with a weary smile that made her look both older and younger at the same time. She hoisted her supply cart and headed for the elevator, then paused and looked back. Hey, if you're ever on this floor again and want some coffee, I usually take my break around 4. The stuff in the break room is terrible, but it's warm and free. I'll keep that in mind, Adrian said, knowing he absolutely would not keep it in mind. Knowing he needed to stay far away from this woman who smelled like a Thorne's bloodline, and smiled like she still believed in hope. He met her for coffee 3 nights later. Their clandestine breakroom meetings became a routine over the following weeks. Adrian told himself he was protecting her, watching over her because she was Catherine's descendant, and he owed the Ashford family a debt that could never be repaid. But the truth was simpler and more terrifying. He was lonely. 300 years of immortality. And he'd never felt as seen as he did when Elena Rivers looked at him with her golden brown eyes and asked him questions about his life that forced him to craft lies from fragments of truth. She told him about her dreams. Strange, vivid dreams that had been growing stronger lately. Dreams of a house she'd never seen, of rooms lit by gaslight, of a man with pale skin and sad eyes who watched her sleep. Dreams that felt less like imagination and more like memory. It's silly, she said one night, stirring sugar into her coffee with a plastic stick. But sometimes I wake up and I swear I can smell smoke, like there's a fire somewhere. And I feel this terrible sense of loss, like I've forgotten something important. She laughed self-consciously. My therapist would probably say it's unprocessed trauma from losing my husband. Maybe, Adrian said quietly, his hands wrapped around a cup of coffee he couldn't taste. Or maybe some memories run deeper than one lifetime. She looked at him strangely then, with an expression of dawning recognition that made his dead heart ache. That's an odd thing to say, Andy. I'm an odd guy, he deflected. But the moment hung between them, heavy with things unspoken. It was Lucas who first noticed something was wrong. Elena mentioned it during one of their breaks, her voice tight with worry. Her son had found something near their apartment building, a silver raven emblem, beautifully crafted with rubies for eyes. He'd thought it was a toy and brought it home, but the moment Elena touched it, she'd felt an overwhelming sense of dread. Adrian's blood ran cold. He knew that emblem. It was a hunter's mark, the signature of an organization that had been tracking and eliminating supernatural creatures for centuries. The same organization that had burned Catherine's house and forced him to watch her die. Where is it now? He asked, his voice harder than he'd intended. Elena blinked at his sudden intensity. I threw it away. It felt wrong, like it was watching us. Why? What is it? Trouble, Adrian said grimly. Elena, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Have you noticed anyone following you? Strange cars in your neighborhood. People who seem to be watching your building. Her face paled. How did you know? I thought I was being paranoid, but yes. The last few nights, there's been a man in a gray sedan. He sits across from the playground where Lucas likes to play. And yesterday, Someone followed me from the diner to the bus stop. Her hand found his across the table, gripping tight. Andy, you're scaring me. What's going on? Adrian made a decision that he knew he'd probably regret. But 300 years of running, of hiding, of watching people die because he'd been too afraid to trust them with the truth. It ended tonight. I'm not who you think I am, he said quietly. And you're in danger because of me. Because of what I am. Because of what you were. What I was, Elena whispered. Elena, have you ever wondered why you're not afraid of me? Why your instincts don't scream danger when we're alone together in the middle of the night? Why you feel like you know me even though we've only just met? She stared at him, her golden brown eyes wide, and he saw the truth beginning to crystallize in her mind. The dreams, she said slowly. The house, the fire, the man with sad eyes. Her grip on his hand tightened painfully. That was you. That was real. Not you, Adrian said. But your soul, yes. Your ancestor. Catherine Ashford, she was my wife 200 years ago. And I've been alive, walking this earth, since then, since before then. He watched her face, waiting for the fear, the rejection, the horror that any sane person would feel. Elena, I'm a vampire, and the people following you are hunters. They've found me, which means they'll use you to get to me. You and Lucas are in danger, and it's my fault. He expected her to run, expected her to call security, to scream, to do any of the reasonable things a human would do when confronted with a predator wearing a human face. Instead, Elena Rivers sat perfectly still, her eyes never leaving his, processing information that should have been impossible to process. Show me, she finally said. If you're telling the truth, show me. Adrian glanced at the break room windows, still hours until dawn. He let his control slip, just a fraction, and felt his true nature rise to the surface. His eyes bled red, brilliant as rubies. His canines lengthened into fangs. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees as his body shed the pretense of human warmth. Elena gasped but didn't pull away. Instead, incredibly, she reached out and touched his face, her fingers gentle against his too pale skin. I know you, she whispered. I remember you. Not everything, but pieces. Your voice, your hands. The way you look at me like I'm something precious you're afraid to break. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I remember dying. I remember fire. I remember calling for you. I tried to reach you, Adrian said hoarsely, his carefully maintained composure cracking. They held me back with blessed silver and holy water. Made me watch. Made me listen to you scream. It's my greatest failure, Catherine Elena. I failed you then, but I won't fail you now. What do we do? Elena asked. And the fact that she said we, instead of you, made something in Adrian's chest unclench for the first time in 2 centuries. I have a safe house, he said. A place the hunters don't know about. We get you and Lucas there tonight, and then I deal with the hunters. Permanently, and after? Elena asked. After the hunters are gone. Adrian looked at this woman who was and wasn't his lost love, this impossible miracle of reincarnation and fate, and allowed himself a moment of dangerous hope. After, we figure out what comes next. Together, if you'll have me. If you can accept what I am. Elena's laugh was shaky, but genuine. Andy, or whoever you really are, a broke widow who cleans floors for a living, raising a kid in a neighborhood where you hear gunshots every night. You're a 300-year-old vampire who drinks blood and can't go in sunlight. I think we're both a little broken. Maybe that means we fit together. Adrian, he said. My real name is Adrian Frost. Elena Rivers, she replied with a small smile. And I think I've been looking for you for longer than I've been alive. They were halfway to Adrian's car when the hunters struck. It happened fast, the way ambushes always do. 3 figures emerged from the shadows of the parking garage, moving with the coordinated precision of a military unit. Adrian shoved Elena behind him, his body becoming a shield between her and the hunters' weapons. Silver bullets wouldn't kill him, but they'd slow him down long enough for them to get to her. Adrian Frost, the lead hunter said, her voice cold and professional. It's been a long time. Boston, wasn't it? 1892? You've been careful since then, but everyone makes mistakes eventually. Let the woman go, Adrian said, his voice dropping to an inhuman growl. Your fight is with me. The woman is marked, another hunter said, raising a device that hummed with electromagnetic energy. She carries the Ashford blood. That makes her leverage. That makes her bait. He smiled unpleasantly. That makes her entertainment. Adrian felt his control shatter completely. The monster. He kept chained beneath layers of civilization, and 3 centuries of practiced restraint, broke free. He moved faster than human eyes could follow, becoming a blur of supernatural violence. The first hunter went down with a crushed windpipe before she could fire her weapon. The second managed to get off a shot silver bullet burning like acid through Adrian's shoulder before Adrian's hand closed around his throat. The third hunter was smarter. He didn't aim for Adrian. He aimed for Elena. Adrian heard the shot, heard Elena's gasp, and knew with terrible certainty that he was about to fail her again. But when he spun around, Elena was still standing, unharmed. The bullet had sparked off some kind of invisible barrier, inches from her skin, deflected by a force that made the air shimmer like heat rising from summer pavement. What? Elena stared at her hands, which were glowing with soft golden light. What's happening to me? Ashford blood, the surviving hunter breathed, backing away. Active Ashford blood. That's impossible. The line was dormant. Nothing about this is impossible, Adrian said, advancing on the hunter with predatory intent. You made sure of that in 1892. You wanted to eradicate a family that carried protective magic in their veins. Magic that could shield against creatures like me. But you failed. They survived. She survived. He grabbed the hunter by the collar, lifting him off his feet. Tell your masters that Elena Rivers is under my protection. Tell them that if they come for her, if they so much as look at her or her son, I will burn their organization to the ground and salt the earth where it stood. He dropped the hunter, who scrambled away into the darkness, and turned to Elena. She was staring at her hands, at the fading golden light, with an expression of wonder and fear. Catherine had that gift too, Adrian said softly. I'd forgotten, or maybe I never fully understood. The Ashford family was special long before I came into their lives. They were protectors, guardians against things that go bump in the night, and you inherited that gift. Elena, it's been sleeping in your blood, waiting for something to wake it up. You, Elena said, looking up at him. You woke it up, being near you, remembering who I was, who she was. It triggered something. She touched his wounded shoulder, and Adrian felt warmth spread through the injury. Felt the silver burning clean from his flesh. Felt tissue knitting back together under her glowing fingertips. I can heal you. You shouldn't be able to, Adrian said, even as relief washed through him. Silver wounds don't heal for days, sometimes weeks. Maybe Catherine couldn't, Elena said. But I'm not just Catherine. I'm also Elena Rivers. And I'm tired of being helpless. If I have this gift, if I have this power, I'm using it to protect the people I love. The word love hung between them, and Adrian felt something he hadn't felt in 2 centuries. Hope. Dangerous, terrifying, beautiful hope. They didn't go to Adrian's safe house. Instead, Elena insisted they get Lucas from her neighbor's apartment first. The 7-year-old took one look at Adrian, really looked, the way children sometimes can, and said, Are you the man from Mom's dreams? The one with the sad eyes? Yes, Adrian said, kneeling to meet the boy at eye level. And I'm going to keep you and your mom safe, I promise. Okay, Lucas said with the easy acceptance of childhood. Are you a vampire? That would be cool. Lucas, Elena gasped. But Adrian laughed, actually laughed, for the first time in decades. Yes, I'm a vampire. And your mom is magic, which makes you pretty special too. They ended up at Eclipse Industries after all. Adrian's office on the 70th floor was the most secure location in the city, with technology and supernatural defenses that would make it nearly impossible for hunters to breach. As the sun began to rise, painting the Chicago skyline in shades of gold and pink, Adrian felt the familiar pull of daylight exhaustion. Elena settled Lucas on the couch with a tablet and headphones, then turned to Adrian. You need to rest, she said, echoing her words from weeks ago. Can't, Adrian said. fighting to keep his eyes open. Have to watch for hunters. Have to keep you safe. No, Elena said firmly, taking his hand and leading him to the chair behind his desk, the same chair where she'd first covered him with her cardigan, where this whole impossible story had begun. No one deserves to be this tired, Adrian. Not even immortal vampire kings. You've been keeping watch for 300 years. Tonight, I'll keep watch for you, Elena. Trust me, she said. And maybe it was the Ashford blood. Maybe it was the remnant of Catherine's soul. Or maybe it was just Elena Rivers being impossibly brave. But she pushed him gently into the chair and draped his suit jacket over his shoulders. I can feel when something's wrong now. If hunters come, I'll wake you. But right now, with the sun up, you're safe. We're all safe. So, rest. Adrian wanted to argue, wanted to maintain his vigilance, wanted to be the protector he'd failed to be 200 years ago. But exhaustion crashed over him like a wave, and Elena's hand stroking his hair was the most comforting thing he'd felt in lifetimes. Promise me something, he murmured, already drifting. Anything. If they come for me, if somehow they get through, you take Lucas and you run. Don't try to save me, just run. Adrian Frost, Elena said, leaning close enough that he could feel her breath against his ear. I didn't survive 3 years as a widow, 2 jobs, and an impossible reincarnation, just to abandon you now. You're stuck with me, both of me, Catherine and Elena, all the versions of who I've been and who I'm becoming. I can live with that, Adrian whispered, and finally let himself sleep. He dreamed of fire. He always dreamed of fire when he slept deeply, reliving the worst night of his long existence. But this time, the dream was different. This time, Catherine walked through the flames untouched, her hands glowing with golden light, her smile sad but not afraid. Wake up, she said in Elena's voice. Wake up, my love. It's not over yet. Adrian's eyes snapped open to chaos. The office windows were shattering, and the sun, the deadly, beautiful sun, was streaming in like liquid gold. Through the broken glass, he saw hunters on the adjacent rooftop, armed with military-grade UV projectors, designed to flush vampires from their hiding places. But worse than the hunters, worse than the sunlight that was already beginning to burn his exposed skin, was the sight of Elena, standing at the window, her body surrounded by a shimmering golden shield, absorbing the UV radiation that should have been killing him. Elena! No! Adrian tried to move, tried to reach her, but his body was already weakening from sun exposure. He could feel his skin beginning to crack and blister, the ancient curse doing its deadly work. Stay back, Elena commanded, her voice carrying a resonance that hadn't been there before. The Ashford gift was fully awakened now, blazing through her like a star. Lucas, honey, get behind Mr. Frost's desk. Don't look. The boy obeyed without question, and Elena turned to face the hunters. You want him? She called out across the gap between buildings. You want to kill a man who spent 300 years protecting humans from things far worse than himself? A man who's never taken a life he didn't have to? Who spent centuries trying to atone for what he is? He's a monster, the lead hunter shouted back. They're all monsters. No, Elena said, and Adrian watched in awe as she stepped through the shattered window onto the narrow ledge 70 stories above the city. You're the monsters. You killed my family 200 years ago, because we dared to protect the innocent, human and supernatural alike. You burned children. You destroyed people whose only crime was being different. She spread her arms, and the golden light surrounding her intensified until Adrian had to look away. The Ashford gift was meant to protect, to heal, to build bridges between worlds. But it can also be a weapon. Want to see? The hunters hesitated, uncertainty rippling through their ranks. In that moment of doubt, Elena struck, not with violence, but with revelation. She opened her hands, and images projected from her palms, memories pulled from her blood, from the ancestral knowledge waking in her veins. The hunters saw the Ashford family as they'd been, saw the good they'd done, saw the innocent lives destroyed in 1892. And they saw Adrian, not the monster they'd been taught to hunt, but the man who'd loved Catherine Ashford enough to spare her the curse of immortality, who'd watched her grow old naturally, rather than turn her into what he was. Who'd tried to save her family and failed, and who'd carried that failure for 2 centuries. He's not the enemy, Elena said, her voice carrying across the gap. He never was. The hunters lowered their weapons. One by one, they stepped back from the UV projectors. The lead hunter, the woman who'd survived Adrian's attack in the parking garage, spoke into a radio. Command, this is Delta Team. Target is confirmed non-hostile. Requesting permission to offer assistance rather than termination. There was a long pause, then a crackle of static. Permission granted. Offer sanctuary. Elena turned back to Adrian, her face radiant with golden light and human determination. Told you, she said, not running. But the UV radiation had done its damage. Adrian felt his body beginning to shut down, the ancient survival mechanisms kicking in to preserve what remained. He was dimly aware of Elena, gathering him into her arms, of her tears warm and human and real falling on his face. No one deserves to be this tired, she whispered, and Adrian felt something impossible happen, felt a warmth spreading through his body that had nothing to do with burning and everything to do with healing. Felt the UV damage reversing, felt his skin knitting back together, felt strength returning to limbs that had been ready to crumble to ash, and then he felt something even more impossible. He felt his heart beat. Once, twice. A steady rhythm that he hadn't experienced in 300 years. Elena, he gasped. What did you do? I don't know, she said, laughing and crying at the same time. But look at your hands. Adrian held up his hands, and saw them bathed in sunlight. Real sunlight, streaming through the broken windows, touching his skin and causing nothing but warmth. No burning, no pain, no deadly curse keeping him forever in the dark. Blood tears, the lead hunter said, approaching carefully. She pointed at Adrian's face, where tears were streaking down, not normal tears, but tears of blood, the rarest phenomenon in vampire lore. Only happens once in a millennium, when a vampire finds true love, real love that transcends death itself. The curse breaks. They become something between human and immortal. They become real. Adrian touched his face, feeling the blood tears, feeling the sun on his skin, feeling his heart beating in his chest. He looked at Elena, who was covered in dust and glass and courage, and he understood. You gave me back my life, he said. You gave me back my purpose, Elena replied. Seems like a fair trade. Lucas peeked out from behind the desk. Does this mean we can keep him, Mom? Elena laughed, the sound bright and clear and full of hope. Yeah, honey. I think we're keeping him. The hunters helped them clean up the office and provided security, while Adrian's people, human and supernatural, both dealt with the damage. The lead hunter, whose name turned out to be Sarah, pulled Elena aside. Before leaving. The Ashford gift hasn't manifested in 6 generations, she said quietly. My organization has been watching for it. Waiting. Some of us remember what your family was, what they stood for. If you want training, if you want to learn to control it properly, we can help, and we can protect you from the factions that won't accept what you did here today. What I want, Elena said firmly, is to go home with my son and the man I love, and live a normal life, or as normal as any of this can be. Fair enough, Sarah said with a slight smile. But if you change your mind, you know how to reach us. 3 months later, Adrian stood on a beach, watching the sunrise, actually watching it, his face turned toward the light without fear, while Elena and Lucas built a sandcastle nearby. They'd left Chicago, left Eclipse Industries in the hands of trusted managers, left behind the skyscrapers and the memories, and the weight of 300 years. The small coastal town they'd settled in, asked no questions about the wealthy recluse who'd bought the old lighthouse, and his family who'd moved in with him. They didn't question why Adrian looked perpetually young, or why Elena's eyes sometimes glowed gold, or why Lucas seemed to have an uncanny ability to sense danger before it arrived. They simply accepted them, the way small towns sometimes did with people who needed sanctuary. Coffee? Elena asked, appearing at Adrian's side with 2 steaming cups. He took one, marveling at the fact that he could taste it now, could taste everything again, the bitter bite of coffee, the sweetness of Elena's smile, the salt in the air from the ocean. "Thank you," he said, meaning more than just the coffee. "For what?" "For seeing me," Adrian said. "For not running. For being impossibly brave. For breaking a 300-year-old curse with nothing but love and determination." Elena leaned against him, fitting perfectly against his side the way she had in another life, in another century. "You know what I think?" she said. "I think we saved each other. You needed someone to remind you that being tired doesn't mean giving up, and I needed someone to remind me that I'm stronger than I knew." "Catherine would have liked you," Adrian said. "Would have been proud of who you became." "Catherine is me," Elena said. "I'm starting to remember more. The dreams are clearer now, but I'm also just Elena. Just a woman who fell in love with a vampire and decided that was okay. That he was worth the complications." "Am I?" Adrian asked, only half joking. Elena kissed him, her lips warm against his, and Adrian felt his still new heartbeat quicken, with very human desire and very human love. "You're worth everything," she said. "And you know what the best part is?" "What?" "We have time now, real time. You're not fully human, but you're not fully vampire anymore either. Whatever Sarah called it, something between it, means you age. Slowly, but do you age? We can grow old together. I can watch you discover being human. You can watch me discover being magical. And Lucas can grow up with the weirdest, most wonderful family in the world." Adrian looked at the sunrise, at the woman beside him, at the child playing in the sand, and felt something he'd thought he'd never feel again. Peace. No one deserves to be this tired. Elena had said that first night, covering him with her worn cardigan. But maybe, Adrian thought, everyone deserved to eventually find rest. Everyone deserved a second chance. Everyone deserved love that transcended death and time, and every impossible obstacle the universe could throw in its path. "Hey," Lucas called from the beach. "Are you guys gonna help with this castle, or just stand there being mushy?" Elena laughed and grabbed Adrian's hand, pulling him toward the sand and the sunshine and the life they were building together. "Come on, immortal vampire king. Time to learn how to build sandcastles." "I'm terrible at sandcastles," Adrian admitted. "Good thing you have eternity to practice," Elena said. And for the first time in 300 years, Adrian Frost smiled without sadness, loved without fear, and rested without nightmares. The monster who'd walked in darkness had found his way to light. The widow who'd thought her story was over had discovered it was just beginning. And the boy who'd thought vampires were just stories now had the coolest stepfather in the world. Sometimes, the impossible happened. Sometimes, curses broke. Sometimes, love really did conquer all. Sometimes, the tired finally got to rest. And sometimes, that was enough.